how to debate like Jesus. The fourth way to debate like Jesus has to do with Mark 12:18 through 27, in which it's going to do with the resurrection. And so, let's get started.
Breaking chains, burning ships, drowning in grace. This is 3 Nails X. Breaking chains, burning.
Debating like Jesus. In Mark 12, verses 18 through 27, in the fourth debate, the first thing we've got to look at before we even start this debate is who the Sadducees are. And so, that's what we're looking at first, right? Who are the Sadducees? Now, the important things for this story is that the Pharisees believed the Pharisees believed in the resurrection of the dead, while the Sadducees do not. That's the big difference. It's one of the biggest religious debates of their time. This was a huge debate. Now, with that, it also needs to be recognized that there are other things that they don't believe. So they also only believe in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, as being part of Scripture. Where they don't believe the rest of the Bible is the prophets and, 1st, 2nd Kings. They don't believe those are Scripture. Now, a key way to remember the Pharisees and the Sadducees is the Pharisees, they're always fair, you see. That's why they're kind of strict, okay? Which in other videos we've talked about them. And the Sadducees, well, they don't believe in an afterlife. So when someone dies, they're really sad, you see. That's at least how I remember them. How you remember them, totally up to you. But let's jump into our story. And the Sadducees came to him, who say that there is no resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote to us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife, but leaves no child, the man must take the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. There were 7 brothers. The first took a wife, and then he died, and left no offspring. And the second took her, and died, leaving no offspring. And the third likewise. And the 7 left no offspring. Last of all, the woman died. In the resurrection, when they rise again, whose wife will she be? For the 7 had her as a wife." Now, very interestingly, what is happening here that you've got going on? You have this scenario, right? Teacher, Moses, you can't really go against Moses, right? Moses instructs that if they leave a wife, and no child, you have to take care of the widow. Now, in their culture, this makes sense because many women were reliant on the husband making money so that they could live and afford. Where, if this law wasn't in place, you could hit some difficulties of widows not being able to even survive. And so this is an important kind of law that really made it that women were protected and provided for even if their husband died. But this is also this kind of it's associated with the book of Tobit in the Apocrypha. There's a woman named Sarah. She marries 7 men, but each one died one by one from a demon. And so finally she marries Tobit, who rebukes the demon and drives it out. There are some people who think that this is kind of a reference to Tobit. Whether it is, whether it's not, whether it's a common story, I think is not the point, but Jesus' response is, right? But think about the problem. In the resurrection, whose wife will she be? She was married to 7 people. Now, Jesus says to them, okay, so we got Jesus' response. "This is not the reason you're wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God." I'm sorry, is this not the reason you are wrong? You know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. Notice that, the scriptures, the one thing they should know, they don't know. And they also don't know the power of God, because, I mean, when you think about it, if God can create all human existence, right, he creates Adam from dust and Eve from a rib, he can do anything, right? He can do whatever he really wants as long as it's in his character and nature. But anyway, so is this not the reason you're wrong? Okay? For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. Now, it's really important here. Like angels in heaven. Like. We do not become angels in heaven. We become like angels in heaven. In what way? Okay? That's what we'll see. And as for the dead being raised, okay, which, oh, sorry, we do know, right? You become like the angels in which way? You neither marry nor are given in marriage. So angels aren't married, they're not given in marriage. It sounds like we won't be married in the next life, okay, which is going to be weird. Not going to be married in the next life. I'm currently married, right? But for some reason, whatever reason, in the next life, there's no need for marriage. Now, I think if you study the purpose of marriage, you would realize, oh wait, there's really not a purpose for marriage anymore. Especially in the resurrection, because and I've taught this in other classes. Probably will teach it in the future here of marriage in an apologetics course in the future. But marriage, to just give like a few quick ones, right? It's to be a reflection of how Christ loves the church. You don't need that in the new creation, right? It's to have children. You don't need that in the new creation. It's intimacy. You don't need that in the new creation. There's already a level of intimacy there with no sin. So really the purpose of marriage seems to be gone in the next life. Now, I think I'll still be friends with my spouse, but I think there's not a real purpose for marriage. She'll probably be my best friend, or who knows, maybe in eternity I want to get away from her.
What?
That's a joke. All the married guys out there are probably like, whoa, it's so true. Totally kidding. Totally kidding. But anyway, verse 26. And as for being raised from the dead, have you not read the book of Moses? In the passage about the bush, how God spoke to him, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You are quite wrong. Okay? So this time, he's just going, you're wrong. So they've got these two errors. They don't know Scripture, they don't know the power of God. Now, they don't know Scripture, it's pretty obvious here. When he says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, he's not saying, I was the God of Abraham, I was the God of Isaac. No, it's a present tense. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, meaning they are still alive. Right? So when it comes to the power of God, resurrection is not a continuation of normal human existence. It's a new life in which we receive this new life, where we're not married, we become like angels. We don't become angels, but we become like angels. Because angels and humans are categorically different. We are categorically different. In fact, from what we learn in Scripture is when we die, we become over the angels. That's what it sounds like, at least in the book of Hebrews. So anyway, very briefly then, the errors, and we've already mentioned them, right? The two errors. You don't know the power of God. We've received new life. We're not married. We become like angels, okay? So they don't know the power of God and that you get new life. You're not married. You become like angels. Because the power of God can resurrect you from dirt. He creates things from dirt. He speaks things into existence. And so they just don't understand the power of God. The second thing is you don't know the Scriptures, right? And we saw that. I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now, here is where an important piece develops. Jesus, when he's doing this, he ends up quoting the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And it's because they only believed the first 5 books of the Bible. They only believed those were the authoritative ones. Now, this can teach us something in general, okay? When you are debating with someone, it makes no sense if you use the Bible when they don't believe the Bible is authoritative. In fact, I remember in my young days, I was, super passionate about following Jesus, and I remember I had this conversation with an atheist once, and he's like, well, why do you believe God exists? And I was like, well, Genesis 1, of course. And I realized, and I now realize, why was I ever quoting the Bible when he didn't even believe the Bible? And I remember talking with a Muslim about the scriptures, and I remember quoting the New Testament. And at the end of the day, they were like, okay, cool. Like, they didn't care because I wasn't quoting what they found authoritative anyway. You see, to debate someone, you have to enter into their worldview, or you have to build up yours in a way that they understand it. Here, Jesus enters into their worldview to make his point. He doesn't assume they enter into his. That is very different than the way most debating happens today with Christians. And I think I can say that. I have a master's. My master's has apologetics. It's a master's in apologetics, MDiv with an apologetics focus. And I found that over and over and over. When it came to debates and things, people failed to enter into the other person's view, the other person's worldview, and have a conversation from there. When you talk from your worldview, and like if you use the Bible as authoritative when they don't believe it, all you're doing is passing each other on two different wavelengths, and you're not actually making any ground. So enter into their worldview. But how do you debate like Jesus according to this story, right? How do you debate like Jesus? Well, think about it. They came up and they asked Jesus a question. And what does he do? He corrects the other person's question. That's what he does. He corrects their question. Whose wife would this be? You don't know the scriptures. You don't know the power of God. You see, he corrects their question, period. Right? I once had a student who said, Mr. Wilson, they were trying to trap me, and they were like, you have to date two people that add up to your age. And when you think about it, let's just say I'm 30 years old. I have to date two people that equal up to my age. I'm in trouble no matter how I answer, right? Right? I can't be like, split that number in half. Yikes. I can't be like, I date a 30-year-old, right? Like, it's a trick question. So what do I do? Instead of answering the question, I debated like Jesus and I corrected the other person's question. I said, I would never date more than one person at a time. That is unethical and immoral. So your question is flawed because it's not something I should ever do, and it's not something I would ever do. So you correct the question. So to debate like Jesus, you don't answer a question, you ask a question, you be ambiguous, you tell a story, and the fourth way, you correct the other person's question. You just correct it. I'll see you next time.
Burning ships, drowning in grace. This is 3 Nails X.